Welcome back, everyone. Our last 30. Had to check my notes, be sure I still remembered the name to our podcast. It's been a little bit, and you know the old story. We get busy, our jobs. Our primary duties sometimes take us away from the fun we get to have. And our primary duties are the Monday through Fridays work week. And so this is a fun and opportunity for us to engage and it started off as being, it's a cool idea, but really we're getting to the point where the guests that we're engaging with and people who are reaching out to us, really an intellectual opportunity to learn, teach a little bit, but mostly learn from our guests. And one of those, of course, is Ray. And when he left last time, we said, man, if ever you would consider coming back, we're so moved by what he said, and so were a lot of our listeners and the feedback we got. And in fact, we maintain contact as we do with all of our guests, and he's back here today and just kind of want to give us an update, a perspective on what he's been up to. And we'll let you take it away, man, and we'd just love to continue to engage and thank you all for supporting and listening in. And again, man, just part 2 with Ray.
Yeah, so hello again. So like I was explaining to y'all, it was extremely coincidental. It was a touch of fate, whatever you want to call it. But I think it was 28 or 29 days after we recorded my other episode, my father passed away. And it was very unexpected. He wasn't sick or anything like that. He was 64 years old. We're still not certain what exactly caused it, but likely a stroke, something of the sort. And I believe it was probably centered around dietary issues. The health of this country is very bad because of dietary issues and things of this nature. And so that was just a incredibly odd coincidence, and I appreciated being here because reflecting on it and taking the time to chat about it and have it at the forefront of my mind, it really did make a difference in that last month. One of which was that I had been working as a bouncer at a couple of bars downtown Dallas, and among other things, it had gotten a little less safe up there. And so I was able to kind of not go in there, and I was helping a friend move out to Arkansas, which kind of prompted a bit of this. I was able to spend Saturday night dinners on the weekends with my father, just kind of chilling, hanging out, and not having to rush out to go to work.
Yeah.
So everything worked out really well, worked out the way it should have. It is one of the saddest things that's happened in my life, but having lost my brother, who was the closest to me about 5 years ago, I was a little bit more prepared to not fall into myself as I would have been had this been the first major death in my life. So life prepares you for life. And it was terrible, but then we got to just move on. And one thing I was touching base on last time was my opinion of needing to make important the time that is left with others rather than making your own time left being important. And that's something my dad always did. So that's nice, is he was always big on, like I said, Saturday night dinners was an occasion where the family would show up. And that included anybody. I got my best friend who she and I have been working together since I was like 14. She comes regularly. Just anybody and everybody is always welcome. And so I just figured that maybe I can come back, chat with y'all, because that's got to be a very unique incidence.
Yeah, thank you for accepting our invitation and for maintaining contact with us. And if you're listening in, that may have hit you as it did Cesar and I. Just be mindful of when you said like that first death and what it does to you and how it affects you, and if you're not prepared, right, it could really throw you off. When you hear stories about for young people, their first death, their first opportunity to process the concept of death happens with a pet, right? And so the importance of you 6, 7, 8 years old, and your dog that you've had for many years passes away, and what that looks like and what that feels like at that young age and how to process it, and then you start realizing that there are people in our communities and in our circles and our family dealt with death of a loved one, of a parent, of a sibling at that age, and you can only imagine what that does for us as men. That's the whole concept of our podcast is Caesar and I talking to men from the community about our last 30 and what death looks like and what it feels like. And yes, we play it as a concept, as a scenario, but we know that the root of our conversation is resulted in our own impact and how we responded and how we would like to think we're prepared and we're not. And really kind of what I wanted to spend today talking about. And you said you were mindful to not fall in, as you did with your brother. And can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. This is about 4 or 5 years ago when my brother passed. It was in the midst of the beginnings of the COVID lockdowns and such. His name was Trevor David Sowers. I know I mentioned him on the last episode. He was a submariner in the United States Navy, and we had moved out to Washington State because he was deployed on a submarine out there, and he had recently gone through a divorce, and so instead of him traveling around the country alone, me and my partner went out there to keep him company and hang out and kind of get a fresh start because I was getting off of drugs. So he was in a drunk driving accident. He was driving his motorcycle, and it was the day before the 4th of July. That was always one of the most depressing days for him because he'd lost a lot of friends, and it was just a, negative nostalgia type day. And so he got into a wreck on his motorcycle, and he passed away, and he was in many ways the bridge that got me into socializing and being more out and about. And so I lost that entire motivation to be able to go out and about after he passed. I sat in my room, played video games almost exclusively until the point where I wasn't eating enough, I wasn't exercising enough, I got nerve damage in my back, and then slowly but surely got myself healthy and started eating right, started learning how to eat right, and then started eating right, started going back to the gym because I'd been in the gym a bunch as a teenager, but I had never really gotten back into it. I had maintained yoga for about 10, 12 years because my sister broke her back when she was a kid and it helped her out. And so her yoga and chiropractor got her back on the soccer field within a couple of years. So for that reason, yoga kind of always stuck with me. But obviously it wasn't enough. Mostly because of malnourishment. Like I said, a lot of it is the same nutrition and dietary issues we're seeing today. I know RFK Jr. talks about it a lot and whatnot. I don't like a lot of what he has to say, but if he's put in charge of the health department, I could probably be all right with that. Like, he has a lot of good stuff to say about getting rid of a bunch of nonsense from our food.
Yeah.
And back then, I was eating less of it, and it was mostly processed food. So I just, between that and then the inactivity of just sitting in a computer chair all day, wouldn't even get up, it was bad. It was destructive to my mindset as well as my body. And I had to go see a physical therapist so that they could help me get the nerve damage itself going, because going to the gym itself wasn't necessarily helping, since I thought it was maybe exclusively inactivity. it wasn't. It was that and a pinched nerve. And so once they got me going in the right direction on the exercises that would help, because I was doing some that were actually a hindrance, then I started getting better, started eating better, and then it was about a year and a half most after the recovery portion was when Washington State was starting to get really expensive, in addition to the fact that it was just kind of time to go. A lot was going on back down here with my family in Texas and with Becca's family as well, because she's also from Texas. And so we moved back. And I'm glad we did, because apparently it was the last couple of years I got to spend with my father. And so, I mean, we had our regular Saturday night dinners twice a month. We got to spend all of our holidays with him. It was just the best way it could have happened.
Yeah. You're talking about, if I could summarize, if you're listening in, right? I mean, the way I'm seeing it is you took an inactive mind and an inactive body and made them both active, whether that was mental health, counseling, or doing something for the mind, and whether that means physical activity, whether it's walking around, depending on your abilities, stretching out what you think, like walking and stretching, how's that going to help me? Well, talk to anyone who does yoga and walks daily.
Well, walking was one of the things that I did as well. It was Pokemon Go, like I was mentioning earlier.
No, I mean,
it was just a good way to get out of the house, get some vitamin D.
100%. No, that's the thing, right? It's like so.
Every little helps.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to say is like, if you think you have to go from the couch to running a 5K the next weekend, that's not very likely.
Ooh, I got a hot take. Humans were not made for running. No, go ride a bicycle, walk, I don't know, Cardio's fine, but I don't think humans were made for running.
90% of the Northwest doesn't like that statement. Like, oh, hold on a second, man. I like to run, you know. U.S. Army likes to run. They like to.
And if you like it, it is good, yeah. But there's
it
nothing
beats your body down, though.
special about running. Running is not a cardio that is above the rest, like we were taught growing up. Yeah. It just. Running is good if you like it. If you don't do it. Find another way. Do some swimming. Do some jumping jacks. Anything. I won't run to save my life. I won't. No. Freddie or whoever's coming after me and says run, I'll be like, bro, we're about to wrestle.
Yeah. Ready? Let's do this. But we're not running, right? I enjoy it, and I know a lot of people do. But I mean, again, right? That's your point. It's like, if you don't like it, if you don't love it, don't do it. There are so many different things you can do. You know, if you're active and engaged, put in the comments kind of what you do to keep your body going.
Yeah, because I use a row machine for my cardio if I'm going to do anything active. Just because it's kind of a full body workout as well. Yeah. But it's a little full body cardio. Yeah. And so we just went camping and my daughter put me in the rowboat kind of thing, and it really was a great exercise. And you know, you're walking around. I went kayaking for the first time since we last chatted. It was man, them shoulders.
No, really,
them shoulders.
Really, right? And here's the best thing about it: it doesn't feel like a workout because you're outdoors. You're the beauty of nature and engaging and hanging out with your children or your family, and just do something, and maybe if possible, do it with someone else, right? Maybe if there's someone else who's like, hey, let's go for a walk, let's go for a run, or let's go camping, whatever the situation.
Yeah, not even every time. Like if you get your habit and you can get somebody to come join you like one day out of the week,
cool. Yeah.
That's good, and that is the healthiest kind of socializing you can have.
Absolutely.
And it just make sure it doesn't deter you from going on the other days where you want to go alone.
Correct. Yeah. Don't use it like, oh, this guy can't go with me, so I'm not going to go. It's your commitment.
But also don't use it vice versa. Like, oh, I'm not going to go out if I can't find somebody to go with me.
Right.
No. Right. Try to find someone if you're a social person, but also on the days you can't, make sure you still go out and get it done.
That's right. Yep. And you mentioned the outdoor component, the vitamin D, the natural supplement that is. Same thing with, counseling or talking to someone or just kind of reducing those escapisms, whether it's sitting there and doing nothing, or using a product that's going to get you off your senses a little bit. Minimize all those things so that you can start to make those changes.
Yeah.
And particularly if you're dealing with a stage of grief, we haven't even talked about that, right? Like, you're just talking about getting out.
You got to be really dangerous or really careful with too, because most of the time in situations like this, especially if you start talking to a counselor, you're talking about psychiatric medications.
Yeah.
You have to stop drinking. Like, there is zero reason to take the medications if you're gonna drink. And there are rare occasions where you can get away with it. You can go have a beer, like, once every few months. And the problem is that you, if you're at peace with yourself, will notice over the course of the next week that will hinder your antidepressant's ability to work. And
correct.
So I talked to a counselor after Trevor passed away, but I didn't have to talk to a counselor after my father passed away because, again, I had learned a lot of my bad habits and I wasn't yet letting any of them take me over.
Yeah.
And I did still have a psychiatrist that I get my medications from and whatnot, but the large majority of people that take antidepressants also drink. And at that point, you're just voluntarily fucking up your liver.
Yeah.
Whatever. There are lifestyle changes that have to come with other life solutions. And my generation, at the very least, is not prepared for such large scale decisions that would ostracize them from the rest of their generation. You stop drinking, you stop doing stuff like that, you stop going out to party, you are no longer a valid hangout place because, they're the buzzkill. They don't. Even if you show up, be the designated driver every time, like, no, I just don't drink. I'm good. Like, no worries. I'm here to chill. Yeah, they'll still stop inviting you. We'd rather get an Uber than deal with that. And it's like, that's a very, very toxic situation. And so solutions are not always one-tiered.
Yeah.
You've got to do something, but you also have to make sure that whatever that solution is, chances are, with how complex people's lives are these days, that's going to affect another portion of your life.
Yeah.
And so you really have to research and study other people that have gone through similar things to kind of get a heads up on what you might go through. But the biggest indicator is going to be you. Like, it's an outdated thing, but keep a journal, blog, whatever.
Yeah, man.
And
I think it's a great
it will
idea.
help you keep track of, because y'all get to do so with this podcast and kind of manage throughout time how you will progress and how you'll handle things. Other people need a similar thing. I do believe that journaling is one thing that helped a lot of people with their mental health. A lot of self-efficacy issues, I think, could be solved by journaling and things of this nature. I also think that very few people are intelligent enough to do so these days.
Yeah.
That to comprehensively journal your thoughts and things you're going through, it takes practice. And that's not even me talking shit about people. It's just that to do so at the drop of a hat and just start doing it is very difficult. It's something anybody can learn, but it would take a lot of people a lot of time to learn, because it is something that English teachers taught, up to like 5th or 6th grade, maybe a little while past that. And then it's just discarded knowledge. And that's a lot of the important things from our childhood.
And you know who really
turned into
took
discarded
advantage of
knowledge.
that was young ladies who took advantage of the opportunity to journal and express themselves, where young men did not. And there's,
historically, though, that's not necessarily the case. Historically, young men have journaled at least as much, because you're talking about war-torn diaries.
Well,
those are journals. Those aren't
right.
diaries.
Yeah.
Some of them are diaries, like legit.
Yeah.
But it just
they're not going to call them that.
Yeah, some of the best,
my war diaries.
Some of the best poets and authors in existence.
Now you're right, man.
Male, and they started or at least participated in journaling.
Yeah.
So I think that that likely, as with everything these days, is one of the many ways that the media is trying to disparage one side of a conflict or another, whether it be male, female, old, young, black, white, doesn't matter. We are taught to look for things that separate rather than being taught to look for things that don't, or look for reasons why something that seems separate maybe isn't. Maybe we need to more decisively find ways to bring people together, even when it is. And I know it seems like such a passing comment, and ignore my just nitpicking on this, but just the concept that when something like that is brought up, your initial thought is that, oh, well, X did this more or better than Y. That is the equation for how we are taught to divide. Is just the first thing your instinctive thought is, oh, well, this is different than this division. Whereas something I heard a long time ago really sticks with me in these moments, and it is the way that the first thought you have after hearing someone else speak or learning a new concept, that is your instinct, which is what you were taught through formative moments in your life, parents, teachers, whatever it was. It's what you were taught to think in response to a situation. After you have stopped, considered that, and come to your own conclusion, that's your thoughts, which often differ, but that is the beauty of consciousness, is we're able to reconsider what our instinctive thoughts are to become who we want to be.
Yeah. Well, and I make that statement, and let me clarify too, based on research and science. The thought behind that is, this is
Am I wrong? Are women more likely to retire?
Yes, let me tell you why.
Well, shit, all right,
listen, let me tell you why. It's offered to everybody. But young men at a certain age, around that, what you said, around the 5th, 6th, 7th grade, move away from that. It's that small select group of men that continue that have been so effective in telling the story. What are we without those stories? What are we without those stories? But unfortunately, by percentage, men do not touch diary and writing.
So is that modern day or true historically as well?
I'm going to go with modern day. Historically, I think that women didn't always have access to education the same that men did. So you look at who's had access. It's always been men.
No, that
but at a university, it's 60-40, increasingly 65-35 women taking classes over men. And then when you talk to any professor who's doing the work, at a 95 percentile rate, women master it. And guys at a probably 30 to 40 percentile rate master it. So men are not handling our business. However, to your point,
that has something to do with the emotional degradation of men in society today?
I think that could be a big piece.
Journaling is
and we do it to each other.
Path to your soul.
Oh my goodness!
And so, if we're destroying the male soul,
absolutely,
that would make sense as to why we have such a hard time journaling.
100%, and part of that comes from other men. If you're in my neighborhood, if you walked around with books, you were probably going to get picked on at the very least, and physically they're going to drop the books from your body.
Hey, nobody can argue that mostly evil men are in charge of fucking shit up right now.
Oh yeah,
like
it starts around that 4th or 5th grade, and so to the strong men who continue to do it, and I like to think that in my life I've been able to journal. Hasn't always been encouraged, but where I get the most progress is when I journal. Where I learn the most is listening to other men who essentially have journaled.
Yeah.
And you know, your biggest point there was the war journaling, the war references, and is where we got the United States early understandings of bravery, of manhood, right? To stereotype. That's where it came from. But it also came from the victor, people who also had formal education. There's not a whole lot of stories for women. There's not very rare stories from the indigenous populations that were not put in a position to share those stories. But present day, what an effective tool, because to me it's inexcusable. Everyone can do it.
Yeah.
Everyone can.
Yeah, 'cause you don't need a physical journal.
No.
You can video.
That's what I was going to
100%.
get to. I think a lot of women right now they're using those platforms to do that. They're just going on doing their blogs.
effective.
Well, yeah, maybe not effectively, but that's what they're trying
No,
to do.
I think with most people, I don't think you should use a platform though. I think it should be for you. For most, most people. But I just didn't want people to get the impression that we're talking about everybody start a podcast. Everybody start one. Put it on the internet. No. These can be your personal, private thoughts.
Unless you want to
just keep a
dedicate
video diary.
hours.
No, don't do it. It's not worth it.
To something you're going to feel
And
like
it's just to say, don't be discouraged by this. It can be a public video.
No, of course, it can be private. It can be. I think for a lot of women, they try to put it out there as well for others to see, for others to have the same validation. Of what they're thinking, of what they're going through, or to relate to somebody. But it's that validation that they want.
And here's the thing, like we say it all the time. I said, listen, we could make this podcast more watchable and more the algorithm could really like it if we said and did some stuff like we change the subject matter, the topic easily. Yeah. But we know it's a small, intimate. Lights are down. The lighting is intentional in here. We're not talking about topics. If we wanted to talk, let's say, listening to sports radio this morning, you want to piss me off and talk about something. Let's talk about the Dallas Cowboys. Let's talk about Jerry Jones and his interview with these guys on the radio this morning, and I'll tell them all about it. Like, we could go down different areas. We could talk about, man, we could have whole podcasts about
conversation. I don't do sports. I'm like, yeah, go my favorite sports team.
Well, for some people, they'll get into it and they'll do all these things. And excuse me on that. That was my medical appointment coming up. All right, so. So you can do a lot of different things. We could change the subject, man. Whether it's hot wings or whatever. Like, we could change the subject, chicks, whatever, right?
Yeah, we could take advantage of the algorithms that are out there.
I said little chickens. We literally talked about poultry.
I just got some chickens not too long ago.
You see, we could help. Dude, I would watch.
I got 4 of them. They're adorable.
Yeah, what kind are they?
They're hens. 2 of them are Easter egg chickens. 2 of them are cinnamon queens.
See, I would watch that. I would watch or read about that to learn all about that because, honestly, for us, we envision. Well, we envision.
It's about time.
Living off. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. Our vision is to live off the grid as much as possible.
Yeah.
And so whether it's pork, pigs, poultry, whatever we need to learn about planting and taking care of things because. Back to your other point on nutrition, man. Mm-hmm. If you're poor, you have to have access to whatever. And that's not what he's talking about. He's saying that if given the opportunity to make decisions, sometimes we don't always make the best decisions. And imagine how that contributes to your mental health, how that contributes to your physical and spiritual health as well. Those choices, and that's where we want to get.
Yeah, it's rough because once you start acknowledging that all of the 90% of the food out there is in some way or another bad for you, you then have to start breaking down your entire trust of the FDA and the government, and it breaks people's world to an extent they're not ready for. And I know I saw one thing the other day that said, American consumers are moving to living off the grid, growing their own plants, getting chickens and stuff because of the inflation and because of how bad food costs are. And I'm like, that's a small motivator, I think, as compared to Americans' realizations that the food they eat is being poisoned, like sometimes quite literally. And so, because having done it at this point, it seems like it's not even all that much cheaper in the long run, maybe, and with large amounts potentially. But as a living in a house like this and having a small backyard, having a few chickens, a little bit here, a little bit there, the amount of work you put into it makes it not so much cheaper, given time is worth money, but it is the assurances that nothing's being touched in the middlemen areas where for so many years, and when I was growing up, you assumed that the burgers at McDonald's were made of beef. Just fuck us, right? Like, no. But even more and more time, as time goes on,
the
it's
chicken,
slow.
the
They're
chicken nuggets are chickens and chicken meat chicks.
Those ones. That was. Whew. Everything we learned is fake. The Monopoly game was fake. It was all just to give out money to their friends. The salt they were putting in, it was all just so that they could eventually put in mono and diglyceride, so they could start putting in fake made sodium. Be like, oh, okay, this is sodium now. And, but since everyone was already like, well, I don't like sodium, but it's okay. Whenever they come up with the faux sodium, and everyone's already on stevia and sweet and low, they're like, oh yeah, it's just sciencey sodium.
Correct.
Which circles back around to the scientism and how everyone relies upon science. And it's not like you have to be a scientist to go dig deeper into those studies and understand them. You can be a moderately well-read individual that can go in, read some of these studies, go down to the conclusion, see what you can learn. You may have to Google a few words, but like you can understand these studies as well as most people and see what is and what isn't healthy, see what is and what isn't backed up by the science, and what just has a fancy paper that says it's backed up by the science. But somebody the other day was talking about how this last year, we have had more retracted scientific publications than ever.
Wow.
And so all the science they're talking about coming out may well have been theoretical and may have been disproven by now. But if they can, just like with the COVID efficacy stuff, sorry if that fucks with your stuff.
Yeah, that's going to knock people up. That's good. That's going to be. My understanding is some people, their channels were removed for saying things during COVID.
Feel free to remove that stuff if you got to. But yeah,
I can't.
it's
my mind's still blown knowing that people were sharing their opinion or sharing what they believed to be the truth. Either way, I thought we had the right to do that. I shouldn't have to agree with everything I listen to. Yeah, I thought that's kind of the beauty of being American and being able to say like, oh, that guy, he's talking out of his whatever. Don't believe any of it, so I'm going to change the channel. That's my option, or vote for someone else, or whatever. But it turns out that there was, now we know, an effort to suppress information.
Yes.
To say things, or
and more than that, there was an effort to push misinformation, malinformation, whichever one you want to call it.
Wow.
From if any of the studies that they used in the original lockdown protocol, shit like that, were referenced and subsequently retracted, ooh, I think that the entire country is on the very cusp of understanding. I think everyone understands it. I think they're on the very cusp of believing it. And really, after that is when it's going to start to really, really dawn on people how much needs to change. Because, like, we were talking about how you watch Candace Owens and whatnot, and she has recently been saying almost everything we know about history is wrong. It's just nonsense. It is crazy. And you can ask Joel. I know Joel was one of y'all's guests, and he's a very good friend of mine. About a year and a half or two ago, when I had just moved down here, I was talking to him, and a lot of nonsense was going on. And y'all feel free to remove this part afterwards if you need to, because it's about to get dark. But what I told him was I was like, okay, what if Hitler was right about any one thing? Any one thing. Not what he did was right, not da-da-da-da-da, but if there was even one single idea that man had that was right, and the world finds out about it, everyone will lose their minds, because we were taught that he was the Antichrist, pretty much. That he was the very definition of evil. He did not have a decent thought. He grew up wanting to murder people, George Soros. And so I would ask him. I'd be like, all right, bro. Like, because he and I love to touch base on big talk and just like, what's the world ready for? What's the world not ready for? How can we help bring them to awareness? And one thing I said was just, if he was right about even the smallest thing, what's everyone going to do? Because at that point, everything has to be reassessed.
Yeah.
You got to go back to square zero and start over.
Rethink everything.
Chances are most of it's going to come back proven right. Because again, it's right. It's not so incredibly off base that people are like, hey, that's wrong. Which means most of it will once again be re-solidified as fact. But I guarantee you there's some important pieces that will be changed. It's just like the people's understanding of physics over the past year or so. I mean, I know there's a lot of weird stuff coming out, but between the Terrence Howard interview with Joe Rogan,
Saw it.
that was the debatably doctored amount of knowledge allowed from Lou Elizondo, and then this most recent interview with the gentleman that was investigating the Malaysian Airlines flight. Candace released an episode. It was about 2.5 hours. Oh, you need to go watch that. You want to talk about some of the best footage I've ever seen of advanced technology. Like proof of advanced technology from 2014. And the gentleman she interviewed, very smart guy, went through and researched a lot of stuff over the last few years while he was investigating it. And he has a very thorough explanation I will not try to touch base on. But he is an indicator that the layman in these days can use the internet, the infinite knowledge in it, and as long as you do your due diligence and really use your own critical discernment when learning on, especially the internet, you may not be able to become an expert in any field or get a degree, but you can become as educated as many people in the field in any subject you would like whatsoever, and you can educate yourself, get yourself up to date, and become an investigative journalist. Or
I'll say this:
keep in mind what you didn't know before.
You made some great points that I think if you're listening, you're going to be like, hold on, man. You probably need to reverse 8 minutes
back a little bit.
Write down some notes and say, all right, here's the other podcasts I'm going to be looking up. We're looking up these names, stuff like that. Yeah. It started with your reference to someone that we reference in only one way as the epitome and definition of evil. And if you took a moment, it's always asking, take a moment to just say, what if one theory, one thing he said was correct or was not evil?
Yeah.
You know, what if he, before becoming a dictator, was studying art? Did he have an understanding? And I think actually that's true. Back in my head, I felt like he was a photography
something
or art,
like
something
that.
With
the arts,
right.
artsy,
something like that.
Yeah.
My point is, the 22-year-old, soon to be mass murderer, very likely said different things when he saw a beautiful woman and engaged. Right. The example I give is years ago during COVID. Right. So to give you a snapshot of what it was for me during what that period was like for me, there was some downtime that I had not had probably since I was a teenager with a new advanced technology, the internet. Because when I was a teenager, the internet did not exist. So fast forward, I know, make your jokes.
I did it.
Both of you, okay? So it didn't exist. So now here I am, soon to be 50 years old. COVID is happening and it's chaotic. So I pick up one little bizarre, crazy theory just to kind of have fun with it and explore it. Flat Earth. Okay. If you ever spent some time on flat Earth stuff. Stupid, ridiculous. No way. Obviously, I've seen a picture of Earth. So you started watching the videos.
Yeah, but did you take the picture of Earth?
Correct. So that's the thing. So when you start watching the videos, they just say I'm not saying this is true, but I'm saying this is true. What I'm saying is, what if what you've been taught is a lie? And what if this might also be a lie? But what if what you've been taught is a lie? And you start making that applicable for a lot
For a
of
lot of
different
things.
things. It's like, wait, what if it's not? Another point, the person made, not on flat Earth, but like, if you're saying these are the people indigenous to the United States, at what period? I'd never heard that concept before. Like, oh yeah, who was here before
Yep.
the Comanche, the Lakota, the Sioux? And then, like, because if we're thousands of years old or millions of years old, depending on what you believe, my point is that it allowed some time to really think about stuff. To our original point about the thought of for me manhood. I had this past weekend spent some time with a friend of mine as our sons went camping, and we were just kind of talking about how we've moved away from what we defined as the purity. I'm sorry, this might be offensive to some people, but the purity of manhood, and that is, to be an honorable father, an honorable spouse and husband, and to know a certain skill set, and to sit down at the end of the evening and process your thoughts. And our point was that we're in a time today where a war in foreign land and famine in this land and natural disasters coming from different which ways. And then you come home after a crazy day of work and your kid just didn't care about it. They just want some time. Your spouse, the people, your friends, they just want to sit outside and get some really good time. But you're so over processing and dealing with all these other things. When do you get back to the quote unquote purity of just being you, a dude, a man, a woman, a human being, a brother, a sister? Like, that's the complexity of life. And what I learned during COVID was I was allowed to take a little bit of time and explore this bizarre thought that had some merit in some points. It made it, at the very least, it made some good points, and that's kind of what made me think when you were talking about, Hitler and or when I was in the army, Saddam Hussein or Gaddafi and all these other dictators and world leaders. And I learned, my point is that I learned from other people that they thought the same thing about our U.S. presidents.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't prepared for that. As an 18, 19-year-old soldier in a foreign land, when the person told me, I'm going to show you what your president did, and showed us the buildings of the bombings post this invasion, I had never heard another ulterior conversation, and that's where I learned the most. I love learning stuff, even if I don't believe it early, because the first time you could say something wild to me, I'm like, man, get out of here. But I promise you later on, I'm like, hold on a second.
Let me do some research on that.
Yeah, what if
In the age of technology, ignorance is a choice.
it is?
Yeah,
It really
absolutely.
is, man.
Absolutely.
Can you you started off talking about the impact, your father's death. Can you talk a little bit about what life was like with him as his son, or maybe the last couple of years? You said it was kind of a nice little privilege to a blessing, if you will, to come back to Texas and spend that time. Imagine, had you not, right? You don't have to. You actually got to come back and spend some time before his passing. You said it was sudden, so it's not as if even you were prepared. Like, my dad's sick, and let me go spend some time with him. He's just living his life.
Yep.
And then he passes away suddenly.
It was good times. We regularly had family gatherings. I was staying in my grandmother's house, who was 5 houses down from him. So I was literally living on the same street right up the way. So anytime we needed anything, we'd walk up there. If they needed to bug us, they'd walk down to us. So it was just really nice, very family oriented. And he's gotten a lot calmer over the years because he went through a divorce 8 or 9 years ago or so, and not an official divorce, but they had separated.
Yeah.
And my partner was there because whenever they were going through that and my mother had left, I was working overnights at DFW Airport. And so my partner Becca was able to keep him company, have dinner with him each night, just chat with him. He'd show her like thousands of pictures because that was one of his big things.
Yeah.
Sitting around and looking at family photos, and he would introduce people to music they never even knew they wanted to hear. But it was good stuff. It was. He was very much a chatty guy.
Yeah.
He could chat about this, that, or the other. He was big on small talk.
Yeah.
He loved it. He and I had actually butted head a couple of times recently because he was struggling with how much the government has been lying to us and how much what we're seeing is being obfuscated with what they want us to see. Yeah. And so we didn't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of things, and that would frustrate him. And I think it also got him learning, looking in, because no one else in the family was questioning things in quite the same way I was. And so that's one of the many things family is about, is having different perspectives to each thing, so that you don't get caught up in eyes forward, don't mess up, because you need to force yourself out of that lane from time to time, and it's harder to do with friends than it is with family. So, like you're referencing earlier to the destruction of male's abilities to be male, I think was either a result or the intention behind the encouragement of the nuclear family, because I can't explain it, but somehow the nuclear family was created to destroy the family. Because, and I don't know, the way I think of it is that prior to that, people would have families of whatever size they wanted. After that, they had a family the size of a fallout shelter out of fear of government action. Whether it be war, our government, other people's government, whatever else, the nuclear family destroyed the household family and their ability to communicate, learn, grow with one another. And the support system you get from family is very different than any other support system you can ever experience. And so, with that in mind, me moving back and having that support structure, which I've always had, it made my path to accepting how life is and even learning some of the more contentious things I was mentioning. Learning them is made easier with a support structure, even if that support structure doesn't agree with you. Not a single one of them agree with me on almost anything, but they're still there. They chat about it, and it is still better than the alternative, which is to not have that. So,
right.
Had a lot of good times with them. Went out and about. Did a moderate amount of housework. We had a few things we had to fix in my grandma's house that last couple of years. But our big thing was Saturday night dinners.
Nice.
And then, I mean, when I went down to mow the lawn, I would get distracted chatting with him. But, it floated. Anyone but me. Yeah.
For the safety of everybody else?
I have almost burned down that house twice.
Oh, okay, yeah. Then I'm glad you weren't cooking.
Yeah. There's, out on the backyard, there's, the back patio, there's still a giant, I mean, the size of me times 2 black mark from when I nearly caught the house on fire because my father was smoking a brisket and I didn't realize he was smoking it. It was on the grill and I thought we were grilling it, but he had one of those little drawers off to the side with the smoker chips. Yeah. And so when I went to go flip it, I flipped it too close. And then I walked outside and there was like 6-foot-high flames. And my mom worked up the road at Starbucks at the time. I was like, Mom, grill's on fire.
I have an important follow-up. Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Did you burn the brisket?
Did you save the brisket?
I was about to say.
I didn't get nowhere near it. She said a family friend of mine. I was like 12. I didn't get anywhere near that. I was taught.
Sir, that's like a drowning infant, like a child.
You put a 12-year-old in charge of a brisket, you get a baby in a pool with wait, what?
Was it saved by somebody?
Hopefully.
It wasn't saved. Like, you couldn't salvage it. Because, like I said, I mean, I saw it. I called my mom. She was about 2-3 minutes up the road. Got one of her customers that was also...
Moment of silence for the brisket.
For the brisket.
It was something. Yeah.
No, man, that's crazy.
No, that hurts. That hurts to hear that the brisket was not. That's a tragedy. Is what we're talking about here in Texas. Texas tragedy.
Yeah. So to follow up on that,
it was back before everything's too expensive, so we went.
That's right.
Yeah.
Grab another brisket. 79 cents a pound.
Right.
Now right. Whatever.
Oh man. But like I was saying, to follow up on what we were just talking about, would you have rather known and have had that knowledge of like, hey, maybe at some point in time, if he was sick or whatever, this is going to happen, or would you have rather it happen just like it happened, just sudden? Like, for example, for me, whenever my dad passed away, we knew he was sick. We knew he was deteriorating daily, and stuff like that. We knew that the tumor he had was inoperable. It was dangerous, stuff like that. He had it for over 15 years.
Without knowing, right?
Yeah, undiagnosed. So undiagnosed for 15 years until he actually started suffering from it. Yeah. So, like, we knew that was coming. Like, eventually, we took him out of the hospital, or we wanted to take him out of the hospital just to let him pass his last few days at home with the family, things like that. Would you have rather have said something like that, or would you think it was better for it to just come suddenly, or to, like, just out of nowhere?
I do think this is kind of an ignorance is bliss type situation. Knowing about it, the problem can be from humans' inability to live in the moment. You either live in the past or the future.
Yeah.
And so there would either be an overwhelming need to make the last of the time the best, which is always a hard thing to do when the best times are natural, or there would be an inability to stop thinking about how the end is coming. So I'm like, no, I think that not knowing is the best in this situation.
Of course.
There are exceptions and whatnot, but I think that if you die before retirement age, surprise might be best, because there's a depression that comes afterwards that is socially acceptable. But if you get depressed about someone about to die, that is not socially acceptable. You will be looked down upon. And so in this world where people are slaves to their jobs, that's an inevitability that you have to contend with, and you will be looked down upon, not just during, but for the rest of your life from those people's minds, because you got sad before.
Yeah.
So complicated.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
I see it. I lived it. It's very, very unfortunate.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Cesar. You might have one more. What legacy did your father leave behind? What do you think? What's his lasting legacy?
I think that something that me and my brothers and sister got more than anything else was the unending need to help others. And we let our egos and many other things get in the way in the manner in which we do so. But all four of us are, at our core, trying to help others.
Yeah.
The road to hell paved with good intentions and whatnot. But, again, there is something to be said about those good intentions.
Yeah.
And having them at the beginning it doesn't eliminate the blame you get from messing that up, but it does help.
I think it's a beautiful lesson.
Yeah.
For all of us. You're right, though, right? I mean, you can be critical and be like, good intentions. Like, but we're doing our best, though. I mean, you could. What's the alternative? Like, to not care and then just transition out, or you could, like, really do your best to make those changes to impact some kind of transformation in your life or the lives of others. And as he's stated, your siblings are all helping others in some way. if you have follow-up questions, for example, on health and fitness and diet, I mean, he'd be a great resource. So hit us up in the chat in the comment section, and we can put you in contact with him, because at the end of the day, if you want to extend life and extend the quality of life, you really need to be doing some things to take care of your body, your mind, and your spirit, and however you define that. But I definitely always appreciate getting that reminder of the toxins that we put in our body, and what inactivity does. Like, it will. I've seen people post the death of their partner, sit there and slowly waste away, or not even actual physical death, but after a divorce, or some kind of difficult transition, waste away. And you could see their body. You can't see their mind. Like, if you could see our minds and what that looks like, it would be shocking. It's no different than when someone sees you and it's like, or you see a family member, like, hey, is everything all right? And you're kind of alluding to, like, maybe you've lost too much weight and it's a health related kind of sickness. People worry about you if you look too frail, right? It's the same thing. What if you are starving your brain, your heart, and your emotions of those nutrients? Reach out, connect to someone, man.
Yeah, I think
it needs to be a great resource.
Just picking back up for that, emotional health, it's just like normal health. You needs to be taken care of. We go to do our yearly checkups. We go to the doctor to do this. Our emotional health has to do the same. Our mental health has to be the same way, because that's all those three components is what makes us who we are ultimately. And if we are lacking in one of them, ultimately that's going to deteriorate all the other factors. And that's just going to come with a lot of other problems and a lot of other issues that we don't tend to explore, we don't tend to talk about, and ultimately is what ends up damaging us. Yeah.
Parting thoughts? Parting question for our guests?
No. I mean, honestly, just thank you for being here. Again, condolences for the passing of your father.
Thank you.
I know it's difficult. It's something. Honestly, for me, it took a while. It took me quite a bit of time to be able to digest.
And it kind of happens like that sometimes, right?
Sometimes sometimes you're feeling amazing. You're like, all right, cool. I think I passed that hump, and then you go right back on it. But I think that's just the nature of life. I think it's, looking back at it, I think it's better. I mean, that's what life is. The kids are supposed to be burying their father, their mother. I think that's better than seeing a mother or father burying their own kids.
Definitely.
I think we don't necessarily see it that way at times, because we never really want to talk about death. We really never want to have death in the forefront of our minds. But that's the one thing that we have secure in this life. We're all going to die. We're all going to pass away. We are going to have that one moment in time. So just being able to understand it and being able to deal with it, and know that grief comes and goes. It's not just one thing that it will be, oh, I went over it, I'm over it. No, it might take you a year, it might take you 3 years, and you might be perfectly fine. You might go down the road in a place that you and your dad, your loved one, had dinner one night, and it was an enjoyable time, and that grief comes right back.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of those triggers. So just being mindful of that. If you're listening to that too, just take care of yourself, talk to somebody about it, and be kind to yourself.
Yeah. Any last parting words for us, man? For our listeners? We
eat more protein.
Eat more protein. I have a colleague who's his morning starts right with at least 30 grams, I guess. 30 grams of protein. I want to also clarify when we talk about that level, that weight reference, it's protein. But yeah, that's how he starts this morning. Breaks the fast. 420 jokes, man.
Yeah. Oh God, I was about to say, what are you talking about? But
it's because I'm from Corpus Christi.
Still.
No, man. We've had a wonderful time. We're going to continue doing this, and thank you guys for allowing us this platform, this opportunity. There's I don't know, over 1 million or 100 million podcasts. You're listening to this one. We appreciate it. We're going to continue. And again, if you have more questions about the physical fitness side, about health, please reach out to us so we can connect you with Ray. Mm-hmm. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and we'll see you in our next podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, guys. Bye.